Men's basketball is our oldest sport here at Northwood. Our first season was 1960-61's campaign. We have 7 Hall of Famers from men's basketball, one of them was Mr. Rathburn. Good to see you tonight. Jerry Petway, you almost got to kind of throw his numbers out because they're ridiculous and beyond video game-like. But you look at Billy Oates, Dallas Logan, Tom Rathburn, Jeremy Piggott are all Hall of Famers. But our next inductee scored more points than everyone except for Jerry Petway in school history. To introduce Mike Urbanus into the Athletic Hall of Fame, the all-time winningest coach in Northwood men's basketball history, Mr. Pat Miller.
Asterisk there, also the all-time losingest coach in Northwood history. You do that when you spend a long time here. A couple of asides just before I talk about Mike. Dr. Purdy, I think we need English immersion until I realized that Roscoe and Coach Ward, they are English immersion. I don't know how that's going to work. And to see some of my former coaching partners, Hall of Famer and Coach Knapp and Jill, I didn't realize that Coach Williams was enhancing your talent all that time. I thought he was just kicking your all's butt, because I used to watch that on a daily basis, because that's one of the truly great coaches in any sport that there is. So, you know, with and one last thing, can you believe Larry Lindsay? Are you kidding me? He gets me hooked into doing this and coming back here for one of my players, which of course he knew I would do, and then he doesn't show up. Huh? Can you believe that, Tolan? Is that Lindsay for sure? I just can't believe that. But when they mentioned Mike Urbanus, I said, of course. He was one of our great players during my tenure here, which encompassed a lot of years. And I can remember clearly Coach Finn, may he rest in peace, supported all of his coaches. He was the football coach and athletic director, but he sat me down and said, you know, we got to get some players here. Who are you recruiting? And I ticked off some people, and I mentioned a young fella in Bear Lake, Michigan, of all places, up below Traverse City. And I didn't have an assistant coach. I didn't have a charter bus. For a lot of years, I didn't have a gym. And Jack said, you know, you can't cover everybody that's out there. I'll go see him play. And so Jack and Doris, his wife Doris, got in the car, and they went up and saw Mike for the first time and came back, and he said, well, you got to get him. Unfortunately, in that era of Northwood's history, we were in the Great Lakes Conference competing against people that had a lot more scholarship. I know that's not the case now, but in those days it was. And whenever I'd find a top-notch player, and sometimes I'd find them early, it seemed like a lot of times they went someplace else. And so when I went and saw Mike, and I took my she wasn't my wife yet, but she's been my wife for 28 years. Regrets not being here because of my granddaughter's birthday. I took her up to see Mike play at Bear Lake, and it was a full house, and his mom, Carol, and his dad, Elroy. There's a reason why these people are in the Hall of Fame. They've got moms. Miss Malik was talking about her mom. They've got parents, and Mike had solid parents. And Mike was always able to, he really came with what I call the ability to manufacture desperate. It's a term I would use a lot and still use with players. You got to be able to manufacture desperate. You got to be desperate to play. You got to be desperate to win and desperate to compete. And Mike's not, he's a little bit more outgoing now than he was then. He was not a demonstrative guy. He was truly the Gary Cooper kind of a guy, strong, silent kid, but he brought it all the time. My wife and I were talking about his career, and I honestly cannot think of one time I had to do one maintenance thing in 4 years with Mike Urbanus. He just never was a problem. He never was a problem manufacturing desperate for a game. He stepped right in as a freshman on a good veteran team, a team that got us to Kansas City the only time. And at that time, I had just started to evolve my offense into what people in basketball now call the stretch four, and Mike was a stretch four for us, and was a five-tool guy and made some big shots as a freshman. And then the rest of his career, we would call his number number 4, play number 4, and that was 2 or 3 times a game when we could get him isolated and get him taking his guy to the basket, and he'd either get a foul or make a layup and get a foul and make a big basket his whole career. And probably my fondest memory is I had to, where's Jeff, Coach Jeff, are you still here? See, I had to drive the bus in my day, Coach. I took care of the vans. Coach Knapp and Coach Williams might attest to that. I took care of the vans and I drove the van. Fritz and I would drive side by side. But every game that I ever drove the van to, I'd look in the mirror, and most players, although Jeff Williams, one of Mike's teammates here, and he was another one that didn't go to sleep. Mike never slept on the way to a game or on the way home either. On the way to the game, he was thinking about what he was going to do. On the way back, he was thinking about what he'd done and what he could do to get better. And I always appreciated that. And I would nod at him, and he would nod at me, and we knew on some level that he was going to bring it, and he brought it. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He's what Northwood University was about, particularly in those days, but even now. We were big in the 2+2 program, and Mike academically had success here. It was a good thing for him to come here. It was a good thing for us and for me to have him here, and I couldn't be prouder. Mike Urbanus.
Well, it was pretty good. He was going to take some of my minutes because he says, I don't think I can keep it down to 3 to 5 minutes. But did pretty good. I'll be even better than that, probably. But I feel very honored to be here tonight. When I got the call from David Marsh, and my wife answered it and came out to the driveway where I was and says, athletic director from Northwood, and I think he already told her, but said, you're being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I didn't know there was such a thing here. You can see how much I keep track. So we got talking, and I'm like, how long have you been doing this? And he goes, oh, about 10 years. Well, I'm like, well, then I got a little insulted. I was like, it took 10 years to get me in here? Come on. But with all that aside, I feel very honored. Come from a small town like it did. I mean, we were talking population less than 1,000. My whole K through 12 is as big as some people's single classes. So to come up from a little northern town to even be noticed, although we had, for small towns, we had some strong teams come through there. And we had a very, very sports-oriented community. The big joke was when we especially go on the road, the last one out of town locked the doors. So you just didn't do that back then. Half the town, the local games would just pack the gyms and it would be loud. And I think that was some of our big success in high school. From a small school, most of us were 6 foot and over, so a couple of us went to college to play. And feel very fortunate for that opportunity. Coach Miller gave me that opportunity, and you know, it was a big deal. It was a big deal for the community, and a big deal for me too. Going to college, I'm not sure if I would have. Really hard to tell. School is not my favorite thing in the world. And actually, when I signed the letter of intent or whatever, it's like, oh, I got 4 more years of school, and I, you know, go figure. But it made it possible for me to get a 4-year degree. So I really appreciate that. Coach Miller, I tracked him down. He was the one I definitely wanted to introduce me, especially out of another state now, to be able to come here. I feel very honored. There's nobody else I'd rather have here do so. My family's here with my mom, my wife, my daughter, my oldest child, and her fiance. Got 4 little ones at home. We decided to spare everybody and not bring them because it would not be quiet, and you believe me. But there's one person that's not here tonight that would have been just absolutely tickled pink, and that's my father. He passed away 4 years ago, and my mother and my father religiously came to almost every single game we had, whether it was at Northwood, downstate, out of state. They drove to Kansas City. They won't fly, so they drove to Kansas City, Duluth, Minnesota for our tournaments, the UP, Canada, I believe they came to Windsor area, everywheres. Same with my teammate Jeff Williams. His parents they were just rock solid. We could always guarantee that we're going to have somebody there to root us on. And my father would have been absolutely proud. He befriended everybody that he came. He would have befriended every single one of you here before dinner. But he was a big figure, and definitely miss him not being here, but I think he is definitely looking upon right now with a big smile on his face. So, and with both of them, school system, getting back at 3 o'clock in the morning. My dad was a bus driver and a custodian. My mom's school teacher. That's a lot of commitment. My dad had to be up a couple hours later, so. So I wish he was here, but I think he's definitely here in spirit. So, but thank you very much. I feel very honored, very blessed to have been inducted into the Northwood Hall of Fame. And with that, I will hush up. Thanks.
Congratulations, Mike.